Hi there. Let's take a look at the judge's order denying Elizabeth Holmes her request for an acquittal, her request to throw out the jury's verdict, which the judge has denied. Why is it important to look at this order? Because words matter, because the judge's reasoning matters. Why? Because he's the one that's going to be sentencing Elizabeth Holmes on those 4 counts of wire fraud, which is currently scheduled for October 17th. And don't be surprised if it gets continued. And why is that? Well, she also filed 3 motions for a new trial based on new evidence, and I call them the 3 creative motions. And spoiler alert, I don't think these motions are a long shot. And when I have a moment, I will get into those videos. And by the way, if you want me to do a live stream to give you live analysis where you can submit the questions and I can at least connect with you, please hit the thumbs up. And if you want to vote, because guess who showed up at Elizabeth Holmes' home? Was it Erica Chung, Tyler Schultz, Adam Rosendorf, Brian Grossman? You can go ahead and vote. So please do cast your vote. And please hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, support my work, share these videos, and do leave a comment or question because I want to know what your analysis is. Because this video is simply my analysis. It's for education and information purposes. Okay, so let's take a look at what the judge said in his ruling as to why he denied and why he found that there was sufficient evidence to uphold these convictions. Okay, so keep in mind again, words do matter, and look at the words that the judge used. All right, so I'm going to show you, I'm going to walk you through. You know me, I like to look at the actual court documents. So I did some highlights here of what I thought was interesting. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. So this is the order denying defendant's motion for judgment of acquittal. This was filed by Elizabeth Holmes. She was asking the judge to throw out the jury's verdict because she was claiming there wasn't sufficient evidence to uphold these verdicts. Judge found otherwise. Judge denied it. So let's take a look at what did the judge say. So following a 4-month-long trial, and I watched this trial, the jury unanimously found that the defendant guilty of 4 counts. So the jury came back unanimously. This is a criminal case. Criminal cases require a unanimous, meaning all of the 12 jurors have to agree to convict. And they decided to convict her on 4 counts, right? The one conspiring with Sunny Balwani to defraud investors, and then the 3 wire fraud counts to defrauding individual investors, the 4 patient-related counts where she was found not guilty, and the 3 remaining investor counts, the jury was undecided. So those 3 investor counts are still out there. All right, so 4-month-long jury trial, unanimous verdict. The government opposed the Elizabeth Holmes request to throw out the verdict because the government said there was overwhelming weight of evidence admitted at trial to support the jury's conviction. Okay. On September 1st, the judge gave a tentative ruling after an oral argument, meaning he had a hearing. He listened to both sides. He considered the evidence. Now, I sometimes think of judges as the 13th juror, right? Because they're overseeing the trial. They're listening to the evidence. They're listening to what the witnesses say. Most judges, take their own notes, right? So they stay on top of the case as well, right? So this ruling is the judge's, in my opinion, it's the judge's opinion of how he viewed the evidence at trial against Elizabeth Holmes. So on September 1st, he gave a tentative ruling that he denied Elizabeth Holmes' motion for an acquittal. So what is the test when a defendant asks for an acquittal motion? They're saying that the evidence is insufficient to sustain a conviction. What the judge has to do, the judge has to look at all of the evidence, whatever the witnesses said in the trial. There are many witnesses, all the documents, all the evidence that was admitted at trial, the cross-examination, everything that took place in the trial. After viewing the evidence in light most favorable to the prosecution, any rational, that was the test, any rational trier of fact, that means any rational juror, could have found the essential elements of the crime beyond a reasonable doubt. The courts give great deference to a jury's verdict, right? They don't want to disturb a verdict unless there's insufficient evidence, all right? So this judge found there was sufficient evidence. So what did he say? And again, the hurdle is high to win a motion for an acquit, right? It's not easy for defendants to win these acquittal motions. So the court found there's sufficient evidence. All right, now here we're going to get into the part where the judge is giving us an evaluation or looking at, or at least citing what evidence that was the grounds for his decision. It says the evidence showed that the defendant and Mr. Balwani conspired with each other to commit wire fraud to save Theranos from financial ruin. So right there, this is what the evidence led the judge to conclude, that the conspiracy between Holmes and Balwani was to save the company from financial ruin. It was a financial motive, all right? Then in 2009, saying that Theranos received a loan to save the company from financial collapse. And then the judge gets into that Balwani, the evidence showed that they focused on the retail companies like Walgreens and Safeway because the money from the pharmaceutical companies was not sufficient to sustain the company. You see how the judge is laying out the reasoning here, right? So they were down to 15 million with a burn rate of 1 to 2 million per week. Walgreens declined to give a further investment without seeing more progress. So Balwani and Holmes had to pivot to the retail investors, right? So they pursued the private investors and used Theranos' relationship with Walgreens and Safeway as proof, despite knowing that Theranos' relationship with retail companies were stagnating, right? Because that's what the government alleged, that the Walgreens and Safeway rollout, the Walgreens rollout had stalled. So we also have, the judge also says the text messages and emails were persuasive, right? The emails between defendant Holmes and Balwani, if you look at the many videos I did on the text between Balwani and Holmes, you can look and see, some of which is cited in this ruling here. So they found judge said the text messages and emails between the defendant, Mr. Balwani, support the conspired to commit wire fraud. In November 2014, Dr. Rosendorf resigned, citing concerns about being forced to vouch for the results that he did not trust. Around the same time, defendants Elizabeth Holmes texts Balwani that they need to stop fighting fires by not creating them. Shortly after that, Mr. Balwani texts Holmes about the CLIA lab, writing that the Normandy lab is a blank disaster zone. I think it was a effing disaster zone. In that same time frame, defendant Holmes texts Balwani about securing a $150 million investment. Do you see how the judge is laying out the facts, the evidence that was presented at trial to be the basis for his ruling here? Okay. So also getting into the amount of money they were trying to get from the Walton family and from Mr. Murdoch. And then within 2 weeks of that, Holmes texts Balwani about what to include in the Murdoch investment binder. And again, you can go look at the text video I did on the text between Balwani and Holmes, and you can see where she asked, whether they needed to remove certain things from the binder before they gave it to Mr. Murdoch. Okay, so the judge also said that a lot of these concerns about the fires were not included in the investment binder. And a rational juror could have concluded that Holmes and Balwani conspired to commit wire fraud, knowing at least one of the conspiracy objects. Do you see this? Holmes and Balwani conspired to commit wire fraud, knowing at least one of the conspiracy's objects, to obtain money from the investors, and worked together to accomplish the goal of conspiracy. That's how the judge saw that evidence, that they worked together to accomplish a goal of conspiracy. The evidence supports a conclusion that Holmes and Balwani lied, not half-truths, which is what the defense argued, that they were half-truths or misrepresentation. No. In this order here, the judge says Holmes and Balwani lied to investors about the capabilities and financial security of Theranos to obtain investments to keep Theranos afloat. It was a financial motive to defraud investors. Another reason is the close personal relationship between Balwani and Holmes was also a consideration that was persuasive. And then also this the incident with John Carreyrou, the Wall Street Journal reporter at that time, the one who blew the whistle on Theranos, about he was coming to get a finger stick to get a test to try out the technology, right? And so here's some information that the judge relied upon in his order here, that they were trying to ensure he received a finger stick test rather than a venous draw. And they were trying to figure out which former employees served as sources. Remember the whistleblowers? I did a video on that too. How they were trying to, Holmes and Balwani, figure out who the whistleblowers were. Tyler Schultz, Erica Chung, Adam Rosendorf. Who were the whistleblowers? Who were the sources for John Carreyrou? And then there is a Balwani text to Holmes that Walgreens was freaking out, and I did a video on Walgreens freaking out. Defendant responded that they needed to. Holmes responded they needed to respond that they had not yet decided to turn it off. Balwani came back with, well, that's a bad idea because they know, so it's better to be transparent. That was very incriminating. Those set of texts, in my opinion, were very incriminating to both of these defendants. And that's obviously what the judge found as well here. And the judge said this, in conjunction with other evidence of financial troubles and a scaled approach to fundraising, is more than sufficient for a reasonable juror to conclude that the defendant, that Holmes conspired with Balwani to defraud investors. So the judge found that there was more than sufficient evidence to support these jury verdicts to find that Holmes conspired with Balwani to defraud investors. And I thought it was very interesting here, this quote here. Indeed, a tacit agreement may be inferred from the conspirators' conduct, as well as other circumstantial evidence, such as a common motive, joint action in pursuit of a common objective, and a coordinated cover-up. Very interesting language. Very interesting. Then the judge went into the elements of wire fraud, the existence of a scheme to defraud, the use of wire, radio, and television to further the scheme, and a specific intent to defraud. There is sufficient evidence, the judge ruled, to convict Elizabeth Holmes on those 3 investor counts. Holmes represented to investors like Brian Grossman that they were using Theranos technology when in fact they were using third-party devices. That was very incriminating. Brian Grossman was never told that his test was going to be run on non-Theranos devices. And in the trial, Holmes' defense team argued that the reason they didn't disclose that they were using third-party devices is because it was a trade secret. Well, the judge said right here, defendant spent great time arguing that she did not disclose the use of third-party devices based on trade secret protection. Well, the jury rejected it. The evidence at trial also demonstrated that Holmes made false representations to investors regarding the relationship with Walgreens. Remember the rollout? There were representations made that they were going to be rolling out 900 stores when in fact she knew, it says right here, she knew that only 200 stores were predicted. And also, you see here lines 6 and 7, Holmes lied to investors, not half-truths. Holmes lied to investors about Theranos technology, growth, and potential to secure funding. Okay, what does this say about the judge's viewpoint of this evidence? And this is the person who's going to decide what her sentence is going to be. And then I thought it was very interesting, this last paragraph. The court notes, in further support of the jury's rational decision making, the jury deliberated for 8 days and returned a split verdict. This history reflects the jury carefully considered the evidence, the arguments of counsel, and the court's instruction as to each of the counts alleged. For these reasons, the court, the judge, denies defendant's motion for acquittal. Those are some strong words that he used in that order. She lied. She worked together. She conspired with Balwani. Doesn't look good for Elizabeth Holmes in sentencing, in my opinion. But you know what? We may have some more surprises. We've got these 3 creative motions for a new trial. Question is whether this sentencing on October 17th is going to get delayed. We're going to see what's going to happen here, and I'm going to stay on top of it as best I can. So what do you think about those words, the reasoning in this decision? Do you think that's going to help Elizabeth Holmes? Do you think the judge's use of words, she lied, she knew, she worked together, she represented, do you think that's going to hurt her or help her at sentencing? Do you think it's going to increase her sentence? So, you let me know. Please leave a comment or question. I want to know what your analysis is. And thank you very much for watching. And please do vote. Who do you think showed up at Elizabeth Holmes' home? Which trial witness? Erica Chung, Tyler Schultz, Adam Rosendorf, Brian Grossman. It's one of the bases for one of these 3 creative motions for a new trial based on new evidence. All right. So, thank you so much for watching. Please hit the like button. Please share these videos. Please do subscribe. And if you want to support me making these videos, I'll put a PayPal link in the description box below the video. Thanks again for watching.